So it gives me very great pleasure to introduce our last speaker for today, although this is only the first day of 2 days of the summit. The second day will be in a couple of weeks' time. I'm so delighted through a mutual friend of mine and John's, who introduced me to him. I reached out to John and asked him whether he would be willing to come and share on the summit today, and he immediately said yes without batting an eyelid. So I'm really grateful to you, John, for your willingness to come in today, because I wanted to hear what you got to say. The title of John's talk is From Commitment to Contentment, the 12 C's for a Happy Marriage. And Jon Mundy, he's a Ph.D., he's an author, lecturer, publisher of Miracles magazine, and director of All Faith Seminary International Miracle Studies program in New York City. He's taught classes in philosophy, religion, and psychology during his career at the New School University and the State University of New York. He's the author of 12 books, no less, and his best-selling book, Living A Course of Miracles, which I know that he will explain about what the Course of Miracles is today, is now in 8 languages. And he was introduced to A Course of Miracles by Dr. Helen Schuthman, who is actually one of the scribes of the course in 1975. And please explain a little bit more about that, John, when you talk. And she was one of the scribes, along with Dr. Bill Telford and Dr. Ken Wapnick. And Helen served as John's mentor until she became ill in 1980. He's also appeared. He's also got a career as a comedian, I see. So we're expecting lots of jokes, but no. I mean, a lot of people may not be familiar with the Course of Miracles here today, John. So I just want to say, actually, to have somebody speaking today who was actually mentored by one of the scribes of this amazing book is a great privilege. And John has got, well, he will tell you everything himself. So John, thank you so much for being with us today, and over to you.
Thanks, Lorraine. Let me say to start, I'd appreciate it if people whose videos are off, well, some of you could turn them on. It's just nice to have eye-to-eye contact with whoever you know. I'm used to being in a pulpit or in a classroom, one or the other, and you can kind of look around and say, well, I think they're getting it, but I don't think they do. So just so that if you can, I'd appreciate it. So thank you for doing that. Hi, Celia. I know Celia. Yeah, wonderful. So apparently a little intro to the course is necessary because we're going to be using course material, not exclusively, but that's been my whole life since I was introduced to the course formally by Helen, Helen was the scribe. Bill typed up what she took down. I mean, it did get worked over by others, but Helen was the one who heard. And her name is Dr. Helen Schuthman. She was a research psychologist, professor of psychology at Columbia University here in New York, one of the Ivy League colleges and one of the most respected universities, and certainly in this country. So Helen was not, although she was very intuitive, she was an atheist, but she could hear things. By that I mean, intuitively, she would get direction in her own life, and this became more and more so as she got older. And then at some point back in 1965, the voice which she was hearing said, "This is A Course in Miracles, please take notes." And she started, and it massed itself up into this incredible book. You see it's got some depth to it. 669 pages of text, 365 lessons. You have to do a lesson a day to go through the material. You don't skip, you do one at a time. Manual for teachers and a couple other booklets, all of which are here. It's remarkable. in terms of its ability to transform our way of seeing and being in the world. Brings the goal of the course is peace of mind. Now, tell me who doesn't want peace of mind? You know, I mean, that's kind of it, right? If your mind is at peace, then the world is at peace, even if the world exterior to you is not at peace. At least you are. And that's the way we bring peace to the world. We have to become peaceful ourselves before we could start bringing it to the world. You can't bring it to the world if you're insane and attacking the world that you see. That's not going to work at all. So that's just a very, very simple description of that. As I did meet Helen. Helen introduced me to the course in 1975. I met her in 73 at a conference. And it was decided a couple of years later that it was time to let me know more about the course. The course is sort of a spiritual psychology. Once you start reading the course, you don't get too far into it, then you're going to go, who wrote this? By then, I mean, it's pretty clear that Helen didn't write it. Helen was an intellectual genius level, I have no doubt about that. But this is just not the way she talked. Actually, the course is written, and it's sort of interesting. Helen's two favorite readings were Shakespeare and the New Testament, and I might add the King James Version of the New Testament. And it's interesting when those two things were written, seeing how most of you are English. The King James Version of the Bible came out in 1611. Shakespeare died in 1616. So it's exactly the same time that this information. And there's a lot of Shakespeare's plays that could be used to illustrate concepts from the course. Dr. Ken Wapnick, who was the leading spokesman for the course until his death almost 10 years ago, based a lot of his lectures on Shakespeare. He would use one of the plays to demonstrate or illustrate many, probably must have done at least 6 of Shakespeare's plays, because it helps to visualize what the Course in Miracles is talking about. And Shakespeare certainly understood a lot of these concepts. He had a way of putting it into a dialogue form, dynamics of relationship. What you're talking about here today, I hear, in good part, is relationship. We're talking about how we get along with each other. And that's kind of like really important in terms of our level of happiness. I am, by the way, currently teaching a class I just started this week on happiness. It's called Perfect Happiness Now. And it is, I'll tell you more about it at the end. It is, if you're interested, available in England. It's at 1 o'clock on Thursday afternoons, which will be 6 o'clock your time on Thursday afternoons, right? So it could work. I'll tell you more about how to do that. Or you could just come to a class for free. And also I publish a magazine called Miracles Magazine. I'll tell you about that at the end. And you're entitled to a free digital copy. If you're in England, you're entitled to a free printed copy if you're in the United States. It just costs so much to send it to England, unless you want to actually subscribe. Now, enough about that. So let's get into our topic. So the course talks a great deal about something called special relationships. Now, a special relationship is any relationship, and I might underline all of our relationships, that we have with the world, with each other, but some of them are special insofar as we have expectations or anticipations about the way that other person is supposed to relate to us. And if they don't relate to us the way we think they should be relating to us, we have the opportunity to get upset or angry or attack or think that they're just being inadequate, or maybe we should break off this relationship, etc. Now, let me also add that I am a minister. I was a Protestant minister for 22 years and then interfaith minister for about 12 years after that. So it's about 40 years. I'm still am, but I'm not active. By that, I mean I'm no longer serving a congregation. My congregation is here. My congregation is on the screen now instead of going into a pulpit someplace or standing in a classroom someplace. All right. So there's no way that we can get through this world without relationship. If you live alone, even if you lived alone in the woods, you would have relationships with nature, with animals, with the weather, with whatever the environment was. Very often, people who live alone will deliberately choose to share their life with a dog or a cat or with some other living species because that brings some joy into both of their lives. And a thing that I want to look at particularly today as being a little bit more difficult is this particular relationship that we call marriage. And if under different circumstances, I ask for raising of hands to see how many of you are married. How many of you are married? It was very few I got here on screen, but all right, well, I don't know. That's a very dynamic relationship. I'm going to try to do some slides, just a few. Let me see if I can do that. Okay. All right. So let me see if I.
I'd need to give you sharing.
Oh, okay. Can you do
Maybe I
that?
can do that. Let's have a look, see how I
You have to
can.
make me a co-host, I think, to do that or something, don't you?
Yep, yep, I can. I can make you a co-host. There you go. You are a co-host now.
All
Yep.
right. Good. And so let me start here. That's just my opening slide for my class. I'll talk about that later. So the divorce rate in the United Kingdom is 42%. The average length of marriage before divorce is 12 years. You know, by the time you get to 12, it's you're either committed or you're going to probably maybe be thinking about going another way. There'd be all kinds of factors that would determine that, especially children. So the average divorce rate is 44 for women, and the age would be 44 for women and 46 for men. In the United States, it's 45. It was 50% back in the 1980s, which really means that we're getting a little bit better about this marriage thing. And the reason we're getting a little bit better is that people are waiting a little bit longer to get married in the first place. And they're also being more sure that they are themselves economically secure before they enter into that kind of relationship. So I came up with what I call the 12 C's for, this is for marriage. I didn't mean to do that for marriage, but you guys are kind of on top of my text here. Okay, now I got you going. So we're going to go over these 12 C's for a contented marriage, let's call it. One, certainly we have to have companionship and communality, commitment, communication, and communion. I'll talk about each one of these as we get to them, okay? Some of these are very practical, like, believe it or not, really a very practical part of marriage is who's going to do the cooking and who's going to do the cleaning and what are we going to do with the money? Those kind of things need to be worked out very much in advance. But the real thing that's needed, I noticed that if you've got the commitment in the first place, then it's very likely you will reach the contentment. Contentment, I put at the end as this is where you want to be. You want to be saying, this is where I want to be. I'm enjoying this. I don't want to be anyplace else. I want to read you a quote about commitment and the importance of commitment. That's a line from the course. I'll come back to that one. This is from Goethe, who says, until one is committed, there's hesitancy, the chance to draw back concerning all acts of initiation and creation. This is one elementary truth that ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. that's the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves in. So what's this like for a marriage? You got to have a commitment there. It could be any job relationship. That you have you're committed or you're not committed, right? This is what you want to do, or maybe it's not what you want to do. And your employer will be looking to see if you're really there. Back to the quote. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred if you're committed. A whole system of events issue from the decision, raising one's favor, all manner of unforeseen incidents and meeting and materials of existence, which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. Whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin now. So what Goethe, you probably know, the German poet and scientist from the late 18th, early 19th century, was saying. So let me go back briefly to this slide here, and let me go off, and I'll jump back and forth onto this slide. Okay. So in a question like marriage, the real question is this first of all, is this somebody I really want to be with? Now, I've done a lot of weddings in the course of my life, hundreds of them. And at the time that I do the initial interview, I often get a pretty good feeling one way or the other about whether or not I think this is a really good idea. Sometimes you just don't know, but there's sometimes it's just like, I've been with couples that I will keep saying, are you sure? Are you really sure that you want to be doing this, you know? And oh yeah. I mean, that's usually the what do you get? Oh yeah, we're really sure, right? But I remember doing one right here, and this is my home office that I'm in right now. I remember doing a consultation with a strange couple. What was strange about them was that she was a very big woman, and he was a very small man. Just the physical thing was sort of different to start with, right? And I pressed them both about this. I mean, and the difference was real. He was a very small man. She was a very big woman. I don't know how else to express that, right? So it came to the day of the wedding. It was at a church somewhere. I don't remember which church it was. But he and I are off to the side of the vestibule in a little room, and she's at the back of the church getting ready to walk down the aisle, right? And we got about 10, 15 minutes in there before anything's going. He starts rationalizing to me about why he's doing this. Now, what? This is no time to start rationalizing to me about why you're doing this. I mean, you know, if you're here and you're committed and you want to do it, this is a very, very exciting. Well, of course, that didn't last. And it was just so clear that it wouldn't. At another wedding that I did, this was also a wedding where I had some question about it, but we didn't have a chance to do a real solid consultation prior to the wedding. I think what we did was done on the phone. It wasn't done in person. I would always want to be in person with a couple. So we had to do the rehearsal immediately before the ceremony. So I'm there, we're doing the rehearsal immediately before, and the guy at one point during the turns around to his friends behind and says, "Hey, buddy, shut the F up," you know. And the bride doubled up her fist and slugged him really hard. I thought, oh God, this is no way to start a marriage. Well, that one lasted about 3 months, and that was a $50,000 wedding. They had everything, you know, the big orchestra and all that sort of stuff going on. Well, are you committed? Do you really want to be there? And are you going to? Is this something you think that you can make a commitment to that's going to last for a very long time? And we have to recognize that what's the reason we're getting married. Now, love is number one, right? I mean, you got to be in love. So you're in love, you're there, well, okay. It's also a really good idea to test this thing out for people who actually live together before they get married. That's an interesting test, and that will probably work better than not doing it, right? So the amount of time that you get, how well you get to know this person, etc., is very, very, very important. So my point is, if the commitment is there in the beginning, then the contentment will be there in the end. You'll be happy that you've done it. In between time, we've got a lot of other C's that we've got to deal with, right? So the first of these, I could go back to that list briefly, but the first of these is commitment. I mean, not commitment, but is communication. The first is communication. How well do we communicate? How well do we talk to each other? You know, and a really good talking, because you're going to spend a lot of time with this person. Something you really have to, you're going to be eating meals together. You're going to go recreational stuff together. You're going to go out together. If you're young, you're probably going to have kids together. This is a lot to be taking on, right? So can I communicate? Do we have communality of interests? Now, you don't have to have total communality of interests, but it's very helpful if you do have some communality of interest there. I mean, let's take spirituality, let's take religion. You know, are you on the same page with that? You don't have to be. You absolutely do not have to be. I have a good friend who is a Course in Miracles student. His wife is Jewish. She's very, very active in her faith. He's been very, very good about actually participating in some of her faith activities. And she's been very permissive about what he likes to do. So they do those two things separately, which is perfectly okay. But it's probably better if you're thinking in the same way as far as your spirituality is concerned as well, right? And other kind of common interests. You want to be sure you have you both like to dance, or you like to do yoga, or whatever it is. You've got to have that kind of communality there as well. And that you're on the same level in terms of talking with each other. My wife and I both are, for example, very much interested in literature. And she's a very big reader and interested in history. So we have those kind of things that we can be working with a great deal. Let me just jump back to my list for a moment and pick out some more that I want to talk about. So you got communication. Now, if you got really, 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 really good communication, then you're also going to have communion. You're going to be feeling good about this. Now, let's get up to a really big one here, which is confrontation versus criticism. So I'm going to jump back and forth to that. So confrontation. So keep in mind what you have here. You have two different wills. And one will go this way and one will go this. Several years ago, oh, a long, long time ago, 1967, I traveled Europe together with a friend. And it turned out, although he and I got along well, he wanted to go there and I wanted to go there. So we just said, well, you go there and I'll go there, and then we'll meet back here. And that worked out fine. At one point, he decided he wanted to chase some girl off to Germany. I said, well, go ahead. You know, and I'll see you back in Paris, and we'll go on from there. But that was a perfect kind of agreement, right? But you're going to run into conflict. Conflict is inevitable. So then the question becomes one of, can you have a kind of caring confrontation where you actually can sit down and talk without, this is very, very, very important, anger, without attack. Attack, let's be really clear about this, never works. It never, the Course in Miracles says it's never justified. All right. Attack never works. Anger never works. Attack has no foundation. So you got to really look, but at the same time that that's true, We need to be able to talk to each other honestly about where we're at. We may need some confrontation. How can you handle the confrontation? Honey, I really don't like the fact that you leave the bedroom in such a mess. Can you start picking up your stuff and putting it where it's supposed to be? And that kind of thing. A lot of communality comes in who's going to do the dishes, who's going to do the cooking. So my wife and I worked that out. I was never a cook. She was married to a cook before she met me. It was a good one. And so the agreement was that I would clean. So she cooks, I clean, right? And every effort to keep it. We both work on cleaning, of course. And it doesn't mean I won't help in prepping, but I don't cook. So, but as long as we have some sort of agreement about that, but there's got to be confrontation in terms of, is there anything in the back of your mind that you're thinking about that you're not sharing, that you're not talking to this other person about? That's very important, because if there is something in there, then you really need to be able to bring that out to, because otherwise it's just trapped inside yourself. It's kind of locked inside yourself. And you can feel bad about that. And you could feel like you're needing to talk, but you're afraid to do it. You got to be up to the point where you feel as though you can honestly share what's going on with you. And then after that C, which is confrontation, but loving confrontation, you'll probably have some opportunity to actually come back in more into communion. Communion being the sense of communality, of sharing, that we're on the same page. And you're going to have a lot of caring in here as well. Caring. Now, let's jump back to the slide a second and just to keep looking at it every once in a while. So you got a careful confrontation. You'll be careful in the confrontation versus just criticism. If it's just attack, and then along with that, we're going to need some cooperative compromise. You know, we're going to have some willingness to let the other person be who they are, right? There's actually a line in the Course in Miracles where it says, you know, if someone asks you to do something, do it, because it doesn't matter. You know, it's not really a big deal. If it's not really a big deal, then why do you have to insist on doing? My wife wants to do something, I will usually, unless there's extenuating circumstances like a different kind of time commitment I have to do some, agree. Let's do it. You want to go here? You want to go X movie? I want to go to Y movie. We go to X movie. Because and sometimes you wish you'd have gone to Y movie, but that doesn't make any difference. You know, the thing is that you agreed to do something together, and the important part is just that you are indeed doing it together. All right. Now, again, the next thing that I think is on that list there is children, and I won't get too far into children, except that it's the same kind of story in terms of who's going to be what are the responsibilities that you're going to have? Who's going to assume time responsibilities? In the past, historically, you know, it's been the woman, but things are changing in that regard, especially when it comes to earning an income, seeing how many families now are two-income families. So in a lot of cases, it becomes day school, or it becomes a babysitter, it becomes something else who's also brought in to help. But you got to work that out. Also, one of the next ones that is on that list there is currency, credit, cash. Everything starts with a C. But how are you going to handle that? That's got to be. So my wife and I, before we were married, we've been together for 30 years and soon married for 27 years. So before we did that, she said, well, how are the bills going to get paid? Well, I said, I'll take care of everything except. your clothes, your car, your personal expenses. She had brought Sarah, a daughter, with her, and Sarah was 7 at the time, and Sarah's expenses. By that I mean Sarah's clothes and that sort of thing. And she said, "That's fine. I agree to that." And she says, "And I'll take care of the groceries." So that kind of way it broke down. And as it turns out, in my instance, my wife is a very good saver. So it turned out that when we had an extra expense like a repair or something, she was very willing to step up and help see that got taken care of as well. So, but it's just as long as, and even today, it's like we're going on a little vacation this week just for 4 days, but I know the way we will handle that on the currency level is that she'll pay one night, I'll pay the next night. She'll pay one night, I'll pay the next night. That's just how things get done. So it works out pretty good that way. All right. Let's just look at a few more of the C's and see what we can see in the C's. Okay. So that's we talked about children, cooking, cash, currency. Let's talk haircut very often. Now I think this is very important. Very often sex will that's a very big role, and at some juncture along the way that's probably going to ease off as we get older, right? As we get older and older and older, but it's so important, I think, that the caring, the comforting, the caressing, the touching, it's probably better if you share a bed. Sometimes there are instances in which I had an aunt and uncle who I knew shared same bedroom but different beds. I thought that was very interesting. But sometimes let's completely share different beds. That may be necessary and one person snores or something like that. But it's really, I think, important to have that physical contact and to be sharing a bed if you can, right? And also just caressing. By caressing, I mean holding hands, putting your arms around each other, holding each other in bed, cuddling. Cuddling is a really important part of this whole thing, the physical sense of that kind of connectivity, right? I love it when I see an older couple walking along holding hands. Just that's a nice, it's just, we're connected. Yeah, there's a joining here that's important for us. So that's a very beautiful part of this whole process. Sticking with that. So I want to read you actually something that I share with couples whenever I do a wedding. This is called a marriage creed. And I think it's so important for couples to be able to hear this and to follow it. Following it, that's up to the individual, but it goes like this. This is by Jenny and Manny Feldman, who were marriage therapists, counselors. It goes like, comfort each other, provide refuge and sanctuary for each other from the chilly winds of the world. Your marriage is a hearth with which comes peace, harmony, and the warmth of soul and spirit. Be a friend and a partner. This is very important. It's very important. People say, I'm married to my best friend. Oh boy, if you're married to your best friend, that's a good thing, because then that means that it's not just being romantic, it's being committed to the friendship. This is somebody, I like this person. That's very, very important. I got to like this person. Friendship can be a peaceful island in a world of turmoil and such. If you reflect upon the true tranquility of future days, you can share with a true friend. Beware of becoming battling enemies under the same roof. Caress as you would be caressed. Warm your loved one with your healing touch. Remember, as babies can die from a lack of touching, a marriage can die from a lack of affection, which is, I was just saying, my wife and I have a little tradition. Across the bed from us, there's a little placard up over her closet door which says, always kiss me goodnight. All right. So we made that a part of our ritual. It's really part of our daily ritual that we don't go to sleep until we've kissed each other goodnight. It's a simple little thing, but that simple little touch is very important, right? Be open with each other. Find not yourselves in secretness that causes suspicion and doubt. Trust and reveal yourselves to each other, even as a budding rose opens to reveal its fragrance and its beauty. Listen to each other. This is the communication part. Listen to each other and hear not only words, but on the language of mood and tone and expression. Learn to listen to understand rather than to argue. Respect each other's rights. Remember, each is a person of flesh and blood, entitled to his or her own choices and mistakes. Seek to honor your partner's choices and forgive his or her mistakes. Allow the other to be an individual. Seek not to create for each other a new mold that would fit only with discomfort and pain. Accept the other as they are, as you would have yourself accepted. Give each other encouragement and approval. Criticism divides, while understanding and support encourages communication and confidence. Cherish your union and maintain enough separateness to allow his or her own uniqueness. And the most important one, the last one on this list, love one another. Love is your river of life, your eternal source of recreating yourselves. Above all else, love one another. So I've been going on for 37 minutes, and if there's anybody that would like to dialogue or to ask a question or to raise your hand and share with me, I'd like to be able to communicate with you as well. Anybody want to share anything?
Well, I just wanted to ask you that beautiful quote that you just read, Jon. Is that something that you could like make available?
I guess so. I probably could ask the assistant to send a booklet that I made up for wedding ceremony, but I could ask her to type it up and email it to you. Because
actually, that you know, a lot of those things are also really key to any relationship.
Yes, this whole list that I've gone through is key to the relationship. I mean, you're not going to caress and cuddle your employer.
Yeah, no.
But you better not.
Might get into trouble. Yeah.
But as far as the being open and communicating and that kind of sharing, yes, of course, that's very important, right?
I just thought it was a really wonderful guide, actually, for to have.
Yes, it is. It's a great guide, But the important part here is the communication, making and being open with each other and not having secrets, because secrets make you sick. The AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, that's one of the basic principles is that secrets, you're as sick as your secrets. And the problem with that, and of course, in Miracles will say it produces guilt. And guilt is a really stinky, awful thing. You just don't want to walk around in your life with guilt. And so that may involve some confession, that may involve some confrontation, that may getting it out, but trying to getting out in such a way that is a loving way, it's not an attacking way. And very often the other will be very appreciative of the fact that you've been able to share that way. Hi, Celia. Get unmuted. You're still muted.
You should be able to speak now, Celia.
Okay, there we go. I just wanted to ask you to read that last sentence again of what you just read.
Love one another. Love is your river of life, your eternal source of recreating yourself. Above all else, love one another. Love one another. Now, that's usually the way I will end a wedding. I'll look at them directly in the eye and I say, above all else, love one another, like a commandment. Which is what we're sharing, right?
Yeah.
Mary?
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Mary, did you want to share? Go ahead. Unmute. Hi. Go ahead.
You should be able to speak now, Mary. You're unmuted. Except I think you're muted.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
I had to unmute
Thank
herself.
you. Thank you, Jon. I'm really enjoying your talk. I had a question about the Course of Miracles. Would you suggest that we get the book on our own, or would you suggest going over that and working with somebody through the course?
You've got to have the book.
Okay.
I mean, that's just very, very simple. You've got to have the book. Most people are doing the course on their own. There are a number of people who do the course in conjunction with a group or with a teacher. There's a lot of varieties of ways that you can do it. As I said, if you want, I'll mention it again. Let me put the slide up about how, if you'd like to join with one of my classes. I think it's, hold on a second. So let me go back to this one. So, by the way, you're entitled to a free subscription to Miracles Magazine, and here's the way you make contact at miraclesmagazine.org. That's the US phone number, of course, but the easiest way is just to send an email to here. And if you'd like to come to one of my classes, that would be English, it's 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in New York. The next class is on June 15th. There would normally be a class next week, but my wife and I are going to be going on a little vacation. You can just sample the class. There's a charge for the class. So, but if you sample, come in, and you'd say, oh, I'd like to keep coming, then send an email to me. And there's my email address right there, john@miraclesmagazine.org. It's very, very simple. Just my first name and then miraclesmagazine.org. And this is a very important concept. I think the course says, people say, oh, there's no such thing as perfect happiness. Well, that's not what the course says. I mean, is God happy? you know, you're reaching back to God. Okay.
So just to make it clear, that the people can go to that class. That's a free class they can go to, and then if they like it, they can enroll on it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Right. Very, very simple. We still got a few minutes if anybody would like to ask a question, dialogue a little bit.
Well, I had a question about conflict. So when I just wonder if there's what you can recommend for, when a conflict comes up and people are really triggered, and there's a huge amount of emotion that's coming up, usually to do with past pain. I just wondered if there's anything that you can recommend to people do in that moment to hold, to prevent those feelings from getting so overwhelming.
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing that's really, really important is you want to stay away from anger, from attack. Now, it's very hard to do, but if you notice that you're slipping into anger, the other part, if anger was coming at me, what I would want to do is I would want to get quiet. There's a very important concept in the Course in Miracles. In defenselessness, my safety lies. I don't need to be defending myself. They're right or they're wrong, but I don't need to be defending myself. Sometimes I need to be explaining something. But it's interesting, the person who taught me this the best was, as I said, when I got married, Dolores had a 7-year-old daughter. So Sarah and I kind of grew up together. And the teen years were a bit of a challenge for both of us because she was very strong-willed and independent and all that sort of stuff, as a teenager would be. So on those few occasions when something would come up, I learned that what I had to do was leave the room. And I had to go to my office, or I had to go to someplace else to give this thing a chance to cool down and get to a place where, and then it wouldn't be surprising if a little bit later, maybe several hours later, we'd bump into each other again, and I would say, I'm sorry. And she'd say, I'm sorry. Yeah. But you're not going to get to I'm sorry when you got this confrontation. That's going to hurt more than anything else. So step away, allow for peace to come into the situation, and then re-enter the situation. It's a difference between sanity and insanity. Because if you're mad, you're literally mad. You're crazy. And you can't really work when you're crazy. You've got to get down to some sort of communality of mind, and then you can work.
And I love what you just said there about letting peace come.
Yeah.
That there is kind of this thing which is a loving presence, if you like.
Yes.
That will come, that does come.
It will come, right. But it can't come in the middle of a battle, like guns going off. I don't mean that literally, but but that's what happens in war. Celia? You're still muted, Celia. You got to unmute yourself as well. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I love that lesson. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. That was actually yesterday's
it was yesterday's lesson.
Yeah. And for me too, it is seeing the other person as calling for love.
Oh yeah.
Every action is either an extension of love or a call for love.
That's right.
And I do the work of Byron Katie, and the work helps me experience the truth of the course.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So it's amazing combination. And I started out with the course years ago.
Right.
Would you like to say, Celia, would you just like to say, because some of the British viewers won't know who Byron Katie is, so maybe you could just say.
Yeah, she's a woman that had been clinically depressed for 10 years back in '86 and had this experience on the floor of a halfway house where she saw that what she believed wasn't true and came up with 4 questions that you can question any thought that's causing you stress. And so I facilitate people, I ask them the 4 questions. And the first step is identifying the thought. So when you're in upset, what's the thought that's causing this upset?
Right.
And it's my thoughts that create the world that I see, which is the course too, that it's all an illusion. It's all in my head. It's a terrible world. I'll find evidence of that. If it's a beautiful world, I'll find evidence of that. And it starts here. So that's my experience of the course that I came to more through the work than reading.
Thank you.
It has a way of making some of this very practical, which is really important to make it practical.
Yeah.
Course in Miracles provides the theory, but it doesn't necessarily provide the practice, the principles.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, when you actually get into negotiating in relationships, communicating, as you were saying, then there are sometimes skills that need to be asked. Somebody's asking what the 4 questions are. Are you able to tell us, Celia, in a couple of sentences, or is that maybe they need to contact you to ask? You're muted again, so yeah.
Oh, you see it. You're muted again. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, go to Katie's website, thework.com. Everything there is free. It's got the questions. It's got worksheets to identify the thoughts and a worksheet to question them. Everything free on thework.com.
Thank you.
Work.com. So that would be the best way.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Sure.
Any other questions from folks who are here today? Yeah, people are giving you thanks.
Okay. Well, let me just summarize by saying that we are here to love each other. That's what we're doing here. According to the Course in Miracles, this is an insane world, in case you hadn't noticed. People get all wrapped up in politics or the stuff that's going on in the wars, which are, of course, a kind of insanity, the world. That's always been going on. People don't seem to realize that that's always been happening. There's always been politics. There's always been fighting in that degree. So the place you want to go to in that is, somebody said to me just a couple of days, I didn't hear this phrase before, and it's a good phrase. It's not about a political situation. It said, "Not my monkey, not my circus." I'm not going to get into that circus. You know, that's a soap opera. Stay out of the soap opera. It doesn't mean you're not going to have your ideas and opinions. Doesn't mean you shouldn't vote for whoever you want to vote for. But that's a relationship too. And if you want to go crazy in that relationship and let that dominate your mind, you can do that. But who wants to do that? Right? We want peace of mind. That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, I love that in terms of a world which can have turmoil in it. It's like, actually, you know what? Yeah, I choose something else. Thank you very much. You can have that, but I'm going to choose this. Because it seems to me that if enough of us choose the other thing, that's what we'll get.
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful. Thank you, Lorrayn.
You're welcome.
Hmm.
Well, you know what? If there's nobody else who's got any questions, and when we are due to finish at 4 today, so we're just about right on schedule here, Jon. Because
very good.
Yeah, we've had a really full day, and I think
that you have, no doubt, with all. And it sounds like a lot of really interesting. Wish I could have seen some of them.
Oh yeah, it's been a really fantastic day, and it's been also, really fantastic to have you here as well and sharing. I mean, I just love the grounded experience of somebody who's been in a marriage and who, has been, is able to explain it, actually, because that's an area that sometimes we don't have experience of. A lot of people don't have experience of that. So it's really helpful just hearing that, and how it fits in with Course in Miracles is also fantastic. So.
I might add that prior to the age of 50, I couldn't have talked about this at all. With any wisdom. I didn't meet my wife till I was 50. I didn't get married till I was 54.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So, well, that's so encouraging to hear, because that, that's also, it's never too late to learn. We can still, wherever you are on your journey, if you're wanting to have, a committed relationship with a significant other, it's there. We can do it.
Let me also explain that just for a second. I was married when I was 22, separated and divorced at 23. There was nothing wrong with that lady. She was a fine person. But I realized that I was too young and I was not ready for this. She was talking about children. I was thinking, I want to go see the world. You can't do both. So it's either deepen the commitment or let's do it now. Let's break it now. That's one of the first things I would want to look at when a couple comes to me for counseling. I think, is there enough commitment there that you can work this through? If either one of you are more than 50% of the way out of the door, this is probably not going to work. So go find a lawyer.
Well, hopefully they can realize before they get to the point of getting married and having to find a lawyer. Yeah, I mean, that has definitely been my story, having had a very sort of driven life, actually, when I was younger, of all these things I wanted to do and traveling and all the rest of it. I didn't want to be in a relationship, actually. I wanted to travel and to do.
Exactly. That's what me too. So guess what? I went to England. By the way, Mundy is English. We're very English.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah. the Lord Mayor of London in 1520 was named Jon Mundy.
Ah, indeed. Yes,
Mhm.
actually, now that you're mentioning it, actually, yes, it is an English name, isn't it? That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, listen, I want to thank you
Sure.
from the bottom of my heart for being with us today. And we've been putting all the details of your courses and everything in the chat while you've been talking.
Wonderful.
And I will be sending all of that out to everybody as well. And there is a replay for this talk that will be available for those of you who upgrade to the VIP, because it is a live summit. And we will also give you details for that. And I will, of course, be sending you, Jon, a copy of the interview if you.
Okay.
And listen, I just really trust that, life brings you back to the UK while I'm here, and that we maybe get a chance to meet with some of our mutual friends.
Well, now that COVID is seemingly in the past, that opens the door for the possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, well, yeah. Thank you, Jon. Really, such a pleasure to meet you, and it's been really insightful and very helpful. Thank you.
Very good. See you, nice seeing you.
Yes.